People will say things like, well, all the other planets are round, so what makes Earth so special? And it's a fair question, especially for someone who is still clinging to the heliocentric model. At this point, they're still trying to make sense of things by what they think they know. However, ask yourself the following question. Why would I judge the shape of the ground beneath my feet by the objects that I see overhead? And you wouldn't, because it makes no sense to do that. It would be the equivalent of saying that the balls on a billiard table are spherical. So the table must be a sphere as well. It's kind of crazy to think that way. And again, the word round is also very subjective. A circle is round after all. So round doesn't necessarily mean sphere. So what does the Bible say about the planets? It actually does address this topic. Remember back in episode 1 when I said to keep the number of planets in mind? Now you'll understand why I said that. The Bible speaks of wandering stars in the book of Jude. Wild waves of the sea, churning up their own shameful deeds like dirty foam. Wandering stars, for whom the gloom of darkness has been reserved forever. Jude 1:13. The word wandering is derived from the Greek noun planetes. That's Strong's word 4107, and I may be butchering that pronunciation, but just hang in here with me. That word is only used in the Bible in Jude 1:13, where we can read about wandering stars. Planetes is derived from the verb planeo, Strong's word 4105, with the meaning of go astray, deceive, get off course, wander, or cause to wander. This verb is used 39 times in the KJV. It can be used to signify a star that is wandering or a planet. And from the passage in Jude alone, we don't have a lot to go on other than the fact that wandering stars are apparently a thing. For further understanding, I turn to the book of Enoch. And if you read my book, Lifting the Veil, then you know why I refer to Enoch. And if you haven't read that book, let me briefly explain. The book of Enoch is an extra-biblical text that was discovered in the caves that fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls were also discovered in. And the book of Enoch is alluded to in our current Bibles with a canon of 66, and Jesus actually quotes it at one point. So I'm of the mindset that if it's good enough for Jesus, then I have no problem to read that for further understanding. With that being said, the book of Enoch tells us that those wandering stars are actually 7 fallen angels that chose to leave their natural course and are now bound until judgment. They appear as stars due to their bright, shining nature. Now take note that there are 7 wandering stars and conveniently 7 planets as well. This will make so much more sense when we get to the episode dealing with the planets and the names chosen for them. So I believe that wraps up the sun, moon, stars, and planets. And, we've gotten to day 4 of creation and ran into a lot of evidence that defies our current cosmological understanding from a scientific point of view. It was a lot of information to take in, so for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to cover the rest of creation. We got the cosmological events of creation covered, and that is what actually pertains to this topic the most. At this point, you may want to go back and check out episodes 1 and 2 if you haven't seen those yet. Because in the next episode, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's the flood. The flood that covered the entire earth and destroyed all life except that which was preserved in the ark. That flood. And we're going to look very closely at that event along with the physics of water. So you definitely don't want to miss the next episode.